I wonder if you've ever been in a massive crowd. This series is called Who Else Is Worthy? And I'll explain why that is in a minute. I wonder if you've ever been in a massive crowd where everyone is singing the same song at the tops of their voices. Maybe it's a football match or a gig. Maybe, I wonder what that feels like. Okay, nod if you've ever had that experience. It feels like there's a feeling of togetherness, camaraderie, unity. Feels like you're part of something meaningful. I'm not a Liverpool fan, but if I was a Liverpool fan, I think they'd be singing something like "Walk on, walk on." You know that song? You've heard them all singing that, haven't you? Any Liverpool fans in the room? With hope in your heart, a few. Yeah, okay, you get it. If you're a rugby fan, I've heard on the telly them singing "Swing Low, Sweet Chat." Oh, there you go, you're all in. As I said, I'm not really into football, but one of my favourite songs ever is "Sunshine on Leith" by the Proclaimers, and apparently, if you're a Hibernian fan in Edinburgh, they sing that on the terraces every week. You know that song? My heart was broken. Do you know that song? While the chief put sunshine on Leith. You know that song. Okay, maybe you're not a sports fan. Maybe it's a pop concert you've been to. Any Swifties in the room? Or Harry Styles fans? Anyone, been to a Coldplay gig? And I've never been, but I've known some people who have, and they give you a fancy light thing that goes around your wrist, and you all wave it, and the computer-controlled lights go as they're singing paradise, para. Feels a bit like maybe what heaven might feel like to me. Well, I don't know. Here we are singing Paradise. I'm more of a U2 man. I've had this experience when I've been at a concert singing, and I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Anyway, you know what I'm thinking. You know what I'm saying. It's the closest thing to in my opinion, it's the closest thing to a communal worship experience outside of a church setting. Can you relate to that? And sometimes I've been in gigs, depending on what they're singing, and I've felt like I've been worshiping and I've felt the presence of God. Not worshiping the band, but taking this opportunity to worship God. Well, this series is called, as I said, Who Else Is Worthy? Oh, there's a nice picture of a gig that I found as well. And this is a series on worship. What do I mean by worship? Here's a definition. Worship is the act of showing deep reverence, honor, and devotion to a deity or a sacred object, often involving adoration, praise, and submission. It serves as a personal or communal expression of value, acknowledging a higher power, or in a secular sense, holding someone in extremely high esteem. It's interesting that most of the definition of worship is talking about the spiritual realm. And as believers, as Christians following Jesus, worship is like our 101. It's like the first thing we do. It's like our main thing. It's the reason for being. It's the start of what we do. And it's fully baked into our church life and our vision statement together. This is our vision statement. And as a church, we like to say that, in essence, what we do here is to love God, to love others, and to love the world. And what does it mean to love God? Well, it means we are a church worshipping and following Jesus together. Now, in a context of a church, worship could mean a number of things. We use the word worship. I can think of three things that the word worship or the term worship could relate to. It could relate to a lifestyle of discipleship. I'm talking about the kinds of people we are. I'm talking about how, as individuals, everything we do, our whole lives, the decisions that we make, how we live, how we speak, how we act, how we choose to invest our time, energy, and money, how we express our sexuality, how we treat others around us, how we care for our environment, all of that affects how we honor Jesus. And as such, all of it could be described as worship. We don't usually use that phrase. We usually talk about discipleship, but in the broadest technical sense, that's worship could be that. We also use the phrase worship just, and many churches use that term just to describe a regular church service where we gather and we sing, yes, and we read the Bible and we teach and we explore its truth and we listen to the voice of God and we respond to him and we pray and we enjoy coffee and snacks and catching up together, basically what we do on a Sunday. And that's worship. We're here. This is a worship service. But we generally would call that a service. But I just want to acknowledge that I'm going to talk very specifically about worship as a specific time of communal singing and prayer, the bit that we normally do for our first roughly half hour or so when we meet together on a Sunday. Although we worship at other times, and it's our communal worship, and I just want to acknowledge that the word worship goes broader than that, but that's where I want to focus this series actually. What we do and how we worship together as a congregation on a Sunday. It's not the only part of how we express what it is to be Winchester Vineyard, but it's a very significant part. And it's one of the things that we do that's important every week, and so therefore it defines us. And that's why we want to dig into the subject of worship. And as I said, I want to focus mainly on our communal, gathered worship. And that's why today we've shifted things around, because the response to this talk is that Graham and the band are going to come back and play. By the way, James, fantastic drum solo. Never heard you play like that before. Awesome. You went for it in that last song. That's brilliant. So what we're doing is we're looking at the songs of heaven, and we're starting in Revelation chapter 4. So if you've got a Bible or a Bible on your phone, turn it up, and we're going to read pretty much the whole of that chapter this morning. And what we find here in Revelation 4 is a detailed and otherworldly description of the incredible worship that is going on in heaven all the time. This is an incredible, amazing picture of worship around the throne room of God. And some of the songs that they sing in heaven are the same, funnily enough, as the songs we sing in our worship times here. Now, you may not have realized that. We sing the words holy, holy in a sort of modern style. We have drums and guitars, but these words come straight out of the Bible. And sometimes, isn't it true that sometimes we need somebody else's words to help us say something that we really want to say? Do you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you can't really say it yourself, so you bring a quote or a psalm or a poem or a song words or something. I was thinking about that film. There's an old Steve Martin film called Roxanne. And it's based on an old French play called Cyrano de Bergerac, which is about a guy who has a massive nose but a beautiful way of writing poetry. It's a bit bizarre, but maybe you've seen the film. The main character is really self-conscious about his big nose, but he writes these beautiful words, and so he's never going to, in quotes, get the girl, but he actually helps this other younger guy get the girl. The younger guy's very good looking, but he hasn't got any words to say. And so there's this whole balcony scene there, and you can just, is it a bit dark? This is the guy, this is the Cyrano. Here's the young guy who's trying to woo the girl, and he's feeding him the lines. And he's saying, say this, say this. And what the young guy's doing is calling on somebody else's words to say what he means. It's a bit of a tenuous connection, I know, but it's the same for us with worship. We come to God, we want to say the things that we want to say to him, and sometimes we don't have the words, but we can find the words in the Bible. Maybe it's in the words of the Psalms, maybe it's in the words of other songs we see in the Bible, or the truth about God. And for today, what we're looking at is what I'd say is the pinnacle, the ultimate, which is these words from Revelation. So let's have a look at Revelation chapter 4. And just before we get into that, I just want to give you a little background to this book. Revelation is the last book in the Bible. It doesn't often get mentioned. It's quite challenging to interpret and understand. It's full of imagery and symbolism. The actual title, the word revelation, the Greek word in that is apocalypse. The apocalypse. Now, there's a load of common misconceptions about Revelation. That it can be interpreted literally as a roadmap of 21st century politics, for example. I wonder what they said about that in the 19th century. But anyway, or that the Antichrist is the main character of this book. Well, he doesn't even appear. Or that the mark of the beast is some kind of barcode or chip. Or that this book is all about doom and gloom and rapture. People associate the word apocalypse with catastrophe or nuclear winter or the cataclysmic end of everything. And actually, this book does talk about judgment. It does talk about the end of things, but that's not its purpose. Here, the word apocalypse doesn't mean the end of everything. It means an unveiling, a revealing, an uncovering, a disclosure of truth that was otherwise hidden. And so the book of Revelation is a book written by the Apostle John near the end of his life, after he had a dream where God showed him some incredible things. It's a little bit like pulling back the curtain of heaven and revealing what's going on behind the scenes. And so we can have these amazing experiences with God. We can feel deeply moved. We can feel moved by a sense of power. We can feel really connected with him. We can feel assured that he's real. And as the Apostle Paul says, it's like looking through a dark glass compared to how it actually is in heaven. And even just reading it is, not going to quite get us there. But that's what this book is trying to do. It describes something that we're not used to seeing with our physical eyes. It alerts us to the spiritual dynamics going on behind the scenes, behind the physical reality that we experience. And there's loads going on in Revelation, but I just want to focus on the worship bit. Because the songs of heaven can inform and fuel our worship. And we've just sung this morning, "Holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." And I just want to talk about one other thing, which is what I call the revelation and response cycle. Now, this is a cycle that happens in all relationships, between all people. Usually what happens is we start to get to know, imagine that you're meeting somebody for the first time. You don't give away too much. You don't get too vulnerable when you start off. When you're starting off, you just talk about the weather, don't you? How are you today? Have you had a good day? Nice weather, isn't it? We keep it light, and only as we get to know people do we share more of ourselves and feel more connected, and therefore allow ourselves to become more vulnerable. What happens is a little bit of revelation leads to a little bit of response. A little bit of revelation leads to a little bit of response, and after a bit, that kind of increases and gets bigger. And it's the same with God. Our worship is essentially the green arrows there. Our response to the revelation of God's truth. So as God's truth is unveiled, as it's revealed to us, therefore we respond in worship. And we go around that cycle. We remind ourselves who he is. Have you ever come into church and thought, "Oh man, I just don't feel like it today"? Okay, well I have, so I'm just going to admit that's me. Not every week. Just teasing. I need some revelation. I need to, find out what the truth is about God today. Because I'm human, I've forgotten. But that revelation keeps us going. It reminds us of who he is, and therefore we respond. And as we respond, more is revealed. We offer our songs of worship, and then we remind ourselves of what God has done for us, the cross, adoption, creation, and on it goes. Sometimes we come to worship and we are all out of truth and revelation, aren't we? We've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten who he is. We're distracted, stressed, broken. That's the reality. The great thing is we don't have to drag some sort of revelation from our own body. The truth is there, and it's the truth about God. And God, in his kindness, is always ready to reveal again who he is. And there's that brilliant song by the Rend Collective says, "What's true in the light is still true in the dark." That's the truth. We might not feel it. If you ever want to know, I was talking to somebody, I think you might be thinking, Claire was telling me one time, you just go out at night and look at the stars. Psalm 19 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God." If you ever want to just stop and pause and get some revelation, you can turn to the Bible or you can turn to the heavens. They're all shouting about who God is. Let's read Revelation 4 together. And you're welcome to follow along, or another thing that I could suggest if you want to is just close your eyes and imagine this picture as I read these words. I'm going to read the first 6 verses first, and then make some comments, and then read the rest. This is Revelation chapter 4. "Then as I looked, I saw a door standing open in heaven, and the same voice I had heard before spoke to me like a trumpet blast. And the voice said, 'Come up here, and I will show you what must happen after this. And instantly I was in the Spirit, and I saw a throne in heaven and someone sitting on it. The one sitting on the throne was as brilliant as gemstones, like jasper and carnelian, and the glow of an emerald circled around his throne like a rainbow. By the way, jasper and carnelian are both stunning, highly prized gemstones in multiple colors and multiple patterns that would reflect the light just so beautifully. Verse 4, 24 thrones surrounded him and 24 elders sat on them, and they were all clothed in white and had gold crowns on their head. From the throne came flashes of lightning and the rumble of thunder, and in front of the throne were 7 torches with burning flames. This is the sevenfold Spirit of God. And in front of the throne was a shiny sea of glass, sparkling like crystal. And we'll just pause there. This is the best job I could get AI to do, to make me a picture of what that might look like. I actually asked them to modernize it, and that's the modern version, so I don't know how you get there. It's probably better in our heads, in our imaginations. But in his dream, John sees this door open in heaven, and he's invited into, or summoned into, the throne room of God. It's easy to think of this taking place somewhere up there, like John has been transported up into the clouds, somewhere high in the sky, but it's not really like that. Let me read you a little bit of commentary from Tom Wright, the theologian and writer who writes about the New Testament particularly. He says this: heaven and earth are not in biblical theology separated by a great gulf as they are in much popular imagination. In fact, heaven, God's sphere of reality, is right here, close beside us, intersecting with our ordinary reality. It's not so much like a door opening high in the sky, far away. It's more like a door opening right in front of us, where before we could only see this room or this field or this street, now suddenly there is an opening leading into a different world and an invitation to come in and see what's going on. So whilst we might think of heaven being somewhere up there, I think it's probably more like VR glasses. It's a reality revealed right here in front of us. We're looking at what we see, and then the Lord is revealing other things behind the picture. That revelation, that unveiling, that behind the scenes is a kingdom reality which John has been invited into. And it looks like what he sees there is a glorious picture of worship. Vivid word pictures he paints. There is the one on the throne. And actually, John doesn't describe God's visible features very clearly. He's very vague about it. Perhaps they're so amazing he just doesn't have the language to describe them. He describes luminous colors and jewels, splendor and majesty. The 24 elders symbolize perhaps the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles, which is kind of like a symbol of completeness. They kind of represent the whole of the earth, the whole of creation, the whole of humanity. And there they are sharing the rule of the world with God. The white robes suggest purity and holiness. The crown suggests royalty. The lightning and thunder and fire show that something is happening. And the crystal sea, or the glass sea, represents evil and chaos in the world. Now, in the Bible, whenever you read of water or sea, it's symbolic of chaos and evil. Think about Genesis 1, the Spirit of God hovering over the waters, waiting to come and bring order where there is chaos. Think of Jesus calming the storm or walking on water, showing his mastery of evil. Think of Psalm 29, your voice is like thunder over the waters. And I think this is really significant because actually what this shows is that evil is, one thing to say. This is not the end of the end of the end. The end of the end of the end in Revelation is in chapter 22, chapter 23. The end of the end of the end is when all heaven and earth join together. And God says, behold, I am making all things new. That's the final day. This is not a picture of the final day. This is a picture of where we are now on the journey to the final day. And so it's important that we note that whilst evil and chaos in terms of symbolized by the sea is still present, it's contained and it's subdued. within God's purposes. This is the truth of the age that we live. This is what's happening now. This is the not yet, which is coming. A time when God will declare, I'm making everything new. And that was crucial for John's audience in the AD 90s, which was when Revelation was written, some 60 years or so after Jesus' time. The believers that he is writing to are 7 churches in Asia Minor, which is now Turkey. They're all named in the opening chapters. These believers were living as believers in Jesus, but under Roman rule. They were subject to persecution. They were subject to social pressure. They were subject to internal struggles. And John is writing to encourage them to remain faithful. He's warning them against compromise with Roman culture and worshiping the emperors. And he's offering hope that God is ultimately going to defeat evil. Evil is subdued and will ultimately be defeated. And the way that John does that is to share this vision with them. That when we go through the door into God's throne room, worship is always going on, and that will help everything that we are currently experiencing. It will put it into perspective. That when we worship God, the very real difficulties and challenges which we face, which are not in any way, we don't pretend they're not there, we're not kind of faking it, but we're holding them in the context of a bigger picture. And when we worship, we tap into heaven's perspective. Let's continue to read the rest of this chapter from verse 6. In the center and around the throne were 4 living beings, each covered with eyes front and back. The first of these living creatures was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a human face. And the fourth was an eagle in flight. Each of them had 6 wings, and their wings were covered all over with eyes, inside and out. Day after day, night after night, they kept on saying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, the one who always was, who is, and who is still to come. And whenever the living beings gave glory and honor and thanks to the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down and worship the one sitting on the throne, and they lay their crowns before the throne and say, You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and they exist because you created what you pleased. Now, these 4 living creatures carry multiple layers of symbolic meaning that I'm not really going to get into, but as far as I think the most helpful way is just to think of them as representing all of created life. God is the ruler of all created life. But actually note that they also, it says in the text, have features of cherubim and seraphim. So they're not just representing all earthly creatures, they're representing all earthly and all heavenly beings. This is a description of a scene where the representatives of all of earth and all of heaven are before God in a song of never-ending praise. I've got a really practical question that I don't know the answer to, which is, how is it that the elders can keep falling down if it doesn't say that they get up again? Maybe they don't get up. Maybe they're just permanently there. Or I'm just imagining, you have an amazing prayer meeting or something, and you're in your presence of God, and you're on your knees, and you sort of take a breathe, and you go, I'll just get up again, and then it happens all over again, and I'm just imagining it's like that. But I do love the way that Matt Redman, he wrote a song where he went, and I'll fall face down as your glory shines around. I love that idea. And the words that we sing are very pictorial and help us with our imagination. But let's just look at these songs. What are these? There are 2 songs in that passage, and this is one of them. This is the song that they're singing in heaven. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord who was and is to come. First and foremost, the worship songs of heaven start off by just stating truth very simply about who God is. Now, holy means set apart. It means someone of supreme moral goodness. It's someone who is revered, who is righteous, who is divine. They are saying, effectively, this is who you are, God. You are set apart. You are supreme. You are like no other. You are holy. That's what it means. I am not. I try to be holy, but I am not holy compared to God. you are holy. It's stating the truth. And they say, who was and is to come. In other words, not only are you holy, but you are eternal, and you are sovereign, and you are unchanging, and you are outside of all time and all space. There has never been a time when God was not holy, and there will never be a time when God is not holy. There'll never be a time before him or after him. These are just some of the qualities of God that when we worship him, this is what we are saying. We're stating the truth, along with all of creation and all of the Spirit. So, when we sing that song, Holy, Holy, God Almighty, who was and is to come, God of glory, you're so worthy, all the saints bow down. Holy is your name in all the earth. Righteous are your ways, so merciful. Everything you've done. That's it. Holy, holy God are you. Or we sing a song like the one we sang this morning. Oh, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. Or we sing this song. Different key. All the angels cry. Holy, thank you. Holy, you are lifted high. Holy, holy forever. Or perhaps if you're someone who's a bit older and you remember this, we sing something like this. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty. Early in the morning, our song shall rise to thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, blessed Trinity. There are a few old timers in here. I'm sorry if you didn't know the words to that. The oldies were just having a sing-along. Okay. Which is kind of like what happens in heaven. It's happening in heaven, right? The oldies are having a sing-along. I didn't plan that line. I don't know if I really agree with that. Forgive me. My apologies. Have you ever just taken time to tell someone just how special they are, how precious they are, how valuable they are, how loved they are, how chosen they are, how treasured they are, how unique they are? When you do that for somebody, when you deliberately look them in the eye and tell them that, what happens? What happens? What happens? How do they respond? Usually, most of the time, unless they're perhaps a stroppy teenager, apologies teenagers, in which case you might get a funny look. But most of the time what happens is that has an effect. When somebody tells us that, it impacts us. And something happens between the two of you. That might be a friend, it might be one of your children, it might be a parent, it might be a loved one, it might be a spouse, partner. But something happens in the relationship when we make a point of telling somebody just what we think of them and how amazing they are. Isn't that true? That's certainly my experience. And when we sing, Holy, Holy, Holy are you, Lord, then something happens in the relationship between us and him. We're declaring who he is, we're reminding ourselves how precious he is, and we're reminding him how much we love him, how revered he is, how honored he is, how set apart it is. There's another song which goes on from holy, which is this one. You are worthy, O Lord, our God, to receive glory and honor and power. You created all things, and they exist because you created what you pleased. And worthy is a different word to holy. Worthy means having value. It means having merit. It means deserving respect, having excellence. It means you're admirable, you're reputable, you deserve something. So the first of all, the worship of heaven starts unquestionably by just saying, this is who you are, and you're amazing. You are God, and you're set apart. And then, not just who you are, but what you're worth. what your value is, what you are to us. This is who you are to us. He is, to quote the film Bill and Ted's Adventure, most excellent. Why does God deserve our praise? Because he's God. He's our creator. He's our father. We are his created loved ones. He's worth our time and attention. He's worth our relationships. He's worth our resources. He's worth our respect. He's worth our honor. He is worthy to receive glory and honor and power and praise. He deserves it. And that's a value choice that we're making. Tom Wright again says, all creation worships God. We humans are called to worship him with mind as well as heart, recognizing that he is worthy of all praise as the creator of all things. We sing that song often, don't we? I will give you all my worship. You know that song? I will give you all my praise. You alone I long to worship. What's this line? You alone are worthy of my praise. That's what we sing. And that's what we're saying. Not just you are holy and set apart, but you are actually worth what we give to you and what we choose to give to you. And of course, there's another song we sing it a lot, which is that you are worthy of it all. You know that song? You are worthy of it all. For from you are all things, and to you are all things. You deserve the glory. He is holy and he is worthy. The songs of heaven are about declaring just how precious, how set apart, how estimable, how valuable, how deserving he is of our praise. You know, sometimes we have space in our worship. The band are playing, they'll sing a song, they'll sing some words, and then they'll just play and leave a bit of space. And I don't know if in those times it might be that you go, I don't quite know what to sing here. If you're ever stuck for something to sing in a worship time, start with, you are holy and you are worthy. You couldn't get much better than that. You probably don't need to move on from there. Well, we do actually, because we're going to talk about Revelation 5 next week, and we're going to talk about Jesus and where he comes into this, but that's for next week. That's a trailer, okay? Make sure you come back. The Song of Heaven, we've only really touched on God the Father, but that's who he is. Just a couple of comments before the band come up and we worship. You see, I said that worship is our 101. It's our highest call. It's the natural response to the truth of who God is, and it's relevant and appropriate anytime, any place, anywhere, and particularly when we gather as a church. What's happening is not just us getting into a room to feel good about ourselves and feel good about each other and sing a few songs like a pop concert and go, hey, what a lovely experience. I mean, you know, it's a good experience, but that's not what's going on here. We're joining in with the Song of Heaven. Can you see that? And that's a really big deal. It's like we have an appointment in the throne room of the King. But we have to do some things to make that happen. We have a choice to make. We have to go through the door. We have to make the effort to get in there. It's all about heart and passion. You see, I imagine, I've tried to describe this a few times, but in my head I just imagine, because this is what I think about, that God in heaven is a bit like sitting in the control room for an incredible recording studio, a bit like this, right? Can you see all those gauges? They're measuring the sound level on all the different channels of music that's going on. And I'm imagining that God has got these all around the place. And then what he does is he goes, it's Sunday morning, I'm going to check into Winchester Vineyard and see what they're doing. So he dials up Winchester Vineyard, and there's our button, right? And we're going for it, and we're singing, holy, holy, and all the things are going up. And the thing is, God isn't measuring the sound level. He's not looking at volume. He's looking at passion. He's measuring what's going on in our hearts, not the volume that we make. He doesn't mind if we sing the latest popular tunes or the old songs or the old hymns or some random song we've just made up. He doesn't care whether it's rock or gospel or rap or classical. He doesn't mind what language you speak. I mean, you just saw in that video worship going on all around the world in different languages. He's listening to our hearts and he's listening to our attitudes. He's interested in what we think about him and what we think about each other. It's all about heart and unity. The songs we sing, I don't think God minds. Just putting it out there. I don't think he minds as much as we do. They're there to help us on the journey. But the songs of heaven are very simple. Holy you are, worthy you are. So what can we do about that? Well, a couple of things. We can be prepared. We can think about that worship journey. And you remember that slide I showed you about revelation and response? We can think about how we come in to this appointment that we have with God. Now, that's different for all of us. You might have had a rubbish week. You might be having a rubbish day. And that's okay. We can do something about that, though. We can come prepared. Because if we have absolutely no revelation, if we're all out of revelation today, then maybe there are just one or two things we could do, even before we came to church on Sunday. You could put on a worship song, remind yourself of the truth. You could dial up a Bible verse, something from the Psalms or something else. Just read it. It just reminds us who God is. We need whatever it is going to take for us to choose to walk through the door. My encouragement to us, and that's, is to think about that even before we come on a Sunday morning. I'm going to worship today. How is my heart? Where am I at? How much of God's truth am I aware of and living in today? Now, that sounds easy. There might be stuff going on in your life that's really difficult. You might not be feeling close to God at all. You might not feel like worshiping. But as I said at the beginning, God is still holy and God is still worthy. I heard a guy called Pt1 talking, and he said, you might think that when I put my hands up, he's a church leader. He said, you might think that when I put my hands up in worship, it's because I am feeling holy and connected and close to God. The truth is, I put my hands up in worship because I am not feeling holy and connected to God, but I am making a choice to let my body lead my soul. I can relate to that sometimes. Anybody else or just me? Just you. Okay, thanks, fair enough. I think there's something about taking it seriously. If a couple of people in this church, actually, and one or two other people I've known, recently got given an honour, an award by the King. Something a bit like this. And I've seen their photos that look a bit like this. And just to say, for their appointment with the King, they took the day off work and went to the place the night before to stay over. They dressed up really smart and got ready in plenty of time, took their family, waited their turn, and then had their meeting with the King. It was a big deal. A meeting with the King is a big deal. And we have an appointment with him every week. And this is the bit I'm going to say, and I want you to hear it the right way. I want you to hear this the right way. We start at 10:30. And if you were to go to the dentist and you were late for your appointment, they'd cancel it and make you make another one. We don't do that sort of thing here, and I'm not here to have a go at anybody. And we really intentionally, deliberately try and do church in a way that's fun and relaxed and informal. That's deliberate, that's how we do it. But we do take God seriously, and we just try and make sure that our relaxed, informal attitude, our chilled attitude, doesn't creep into how we approach our relationship with God. Do you get me? Now, please don't feel beaten up or told off or like I'm judging anybody. I'm really not. I want to encourage us. There's an appointment with the King. And you may not know this, but I've led worship here and I've watched as the church fills up on Sunday morning. And it's wonderful that we're all here. I'm just saying, if you're not here at the start, you're missing out on some time to connect with the King. And depending on how prepared you are when you come, you might be missing out on the opportunity to get really close. We're going to talk about that another time. Look, why don't you stand and why don't the band come up? And Graham and the guys are going to lead us in some worship.